In a shocking escalation of Hollywood's longest-running feud, Matt Damon finally reached his breaking point on Jimmy Kimmel Live last night. What began as another promotional appearance quickly descended into chaos as years of tension boiled over into a heated confrontation that left the studio audience stunned. Kimmel's trademark mockery crossed a line that even seasoned Hollywood wasn't prepared for. The tension was palpable from the moment Matt Damon walked onto the stage of Jimmy Kimmel Live. After years of the infamous "Sorry to Matt Damon, we ran out of time" gag and countless jabs at the actor's expense, viewers expected the usual playful banter between the host and his long-standing nemesis. But something was different this time. Kimmel's smile seemed forced, his eyes revealing a hardness not typically seen on the late-night show. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the man who keeps showing up despite being told repeatedly that we don't want him here," Kimmel announced with a smirk that felt more cutting than comedic. "Matt Damon." The audience laughed, but awkwardly. Damon emerged with his characteristic good-natured smile, waving to the crowd as he approached the desk. The two men shook hands, but observers noted the stiffness in their greeting. "It's been a while, Matt. I see your career still hasn't recovered from the Great Wall," Kimmel quipped immediately, referencing Damon's 2016 film that had been criticized for whitewashing. Damon's smile tightened, but he played along. "Well, Jimmy, at least my movies actually make it to theaters instead of being shelved indefinitely." The audience responded with a collective "ooh," sensing that this exchange might venture beyond their typical back and forth. Kimmel's eyes narrowed slightly, but he continued with his planned interview. "So, Matt, you're here to promote your new film, The Mediocre American, is that right?" Kimmel deliberately misnamed Damon's latest project, The Remarkable Americans, a historical drama that had already generated early Oscar buzz. "It's The Remarkable Americans, Jimmy," Damon corrected, his tone still light but with an edge creeping in. "I know reading can be difficult for someone with your limited intellectual capacity, but it's right there on the teleprompter." The crowd laughed nervously. Kimmel's expression hardened, but he pressed on, pulling out a tablet. "Let's take a look at some clips that the studio sent over. I have to say, from what I've seen, remarkable is quite a stretch." What appeared on screen wasn't footage from Damon's new film, but rather a poorly edited montage of the actor's worst on-screen moments, awkward interview clips, and unflattering paparazzi photos. The segment, clearly prepared in advance, played for an uncomfortable 30 seconds before Damon signaled to someone off-camera. "Cut it," Damon said firmly, his famous composure beginning to crack. "That's enough, Jimmy," Kimmel feigned innocence. "What's wrong? I thought you'd appreciate a little walk down memory lane. The audience loves it, don't you?" He turned to the crowd, who responded with uncomfortable silence. "Look, I came here to talk about a film that my entire team worked incredibly hard on," Damon said, his voice measured but tight. "This isn't just about me. There are hundreds of people who poured their hearts into this project." Kimmel leaned back in his chair, an unsettling gleam in his eye. "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot how seriously you take yourself these days. Tell me, is that why Ben Affleck has been distancing himself from you lately? Word around town is that even your best friend can't stand being in the same room with you anymore." The atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. This wasn't the usual playful ribbing, but something more personal, more targeted. The audience fell completely silent. Damon's jaw tightened visibly. "That's really the route you want to take tonight?" Damon asked quietly. "Just trying to keep things interesting," Kimmel replied with a dismissive wave. "Your interviews are typically about as exciting as watching paint dry. I'm doing you a favor here." Damon took a deep breath, clearly making an effort to remain professional. "Let's get back to the film. As I was saying—" "Actually," Kimmel interrupted, "before we do that, I have something special planned." He turned to address his sidekick. "Guillermo, can you bring out our surprise?" Guillermo wheeled out a large cardboard cutout of Damon from his Jason Bourne days, except it had been defaced with childish doodles and unflattering modifications. Written across it in bold letters were the words, "Has been." The audience gasped. This had gone beyond entertainment into something that felt mean-spirited and planned. "You think this is funny?" Damon asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I think it's hilarious," Kimmel replied, barely containing his laughter. "Almost as funny as your attempt to revive your career with this pretentious new movie." Damon stood up, slowly straightening his jacket. "You know what, Jimmy? I've played along with this feud for years because I thought it was just good television. But there's a line between comedy and cruelty, and you've been crossing it more and more lately." Kimmel's smile faltered slightly, but he pressed on. "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. This is what we do." "No," Damon countered, his voice stronger now. "This is what you do. And frankly, it's getting old. There's a reason your ratings have been in free fall." The mention of ratings visibly struck a nerve with Kimmel. His face flushed red as the camera caught a glimpse of genuine anger. "Rich coming from someone whose last 3 films flopped," Kimmel shot back, abandoning any pretense of playful banter. "At least people still watch me every night. Can you say the same about your movies?" The tension in the studio was suffocating. Crew members exchanged worried glances. This wasn't how the segment was supposed to go, and everyone could feel the situation spiraling out of control. Damon looked directly into the camera, then back at Kimmel. "You know, for years, people have been telling me what you're really like when the cameras stop rolling. How you treat your staff, how you talk about guests behind their backs. I always defended you because I thought I knew the real Jimmy." "Guess I was wrong," the audience murmured in shock. Kimmel's face froze in a rictus of a smile as he realized the conversation had veered into dangerous territory. He glanced nervously at his producer off camera, clearly looking for a way to regain control of the situation. "We'll be right back after these messages," Kimmel said abruptly, signaling for a commercial break. But as the applause sign lit up, not a single person in the audience clapped. As the cameras prepared to cut away, Damon leaned forward, his microphone still hot. "You're not cutting to commercial. We're going to finish this conversation right here, right now. The audience deserves to see what happens when you push someone too far." The director frantically gestured from the sidelines, but Kimmel raised a hand to stop him. The red light on the camera remained on. The audience sat in stunned silence, witnesses to something that had transcended entertainment and entered the realm of raw, unfiltered conflict. "You want to do this here?" Kimmel asked, his trademark smirk faltering. "Fine. Let's do this." He loosened his tie slightly, a gesture that seemed both defensive and aggressive. "You've been riding this nice guy image for decades, Matt. The humble Boston boy who made it big. But everyone in this industry knows it's an act." Damon laughed without humor. "That's rich coming from you. The man who built an entire brand on being the everyday guy who loves basketball and beer, while behind the scenes you're ordering assistants to pick the green M&Ms out of your candy bowl." Several crew members visibly reacted, and a woman standing near the teleprompter covered her mouth in shock. Kimmel's eyes darted nervously toward his production team. "You don't know what you're talking about," Kimmel said, his voice lower now, dangerous. "Don't I?" Damon leaned forward. "3 of your former writers work on my current project. The stories, they tell about how you treat people when you think no one important is watching." He shook his head. "It's disappointing, Jimmy. Really disappointing." Kimmel's face flushed crimson. "At least I'm not the one who spent years pretending not to know about certain producers and their behavior. Hollywood's golden boy turning a blind eye when it suited his career." The accusation hung in the air like poison. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Damon's expression transformed from anger to something colder, more contained. "You want to go there? Really?" Damon's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it more intimidating. Let's talk about who you've protected over the years, Jimmy. Let's talk about the jokes you've made at victims' expense. Let's talk about the times you've used your platform to bully people who couldn't fight back. The studio fell so silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Guillermo, Kimmel's sidekick, had backed away from the stage entirely, watching the train wreck unfold from a safe distance. "This isn't about me," Kimmel deflected, trying to regain his footing. "This is about you not being able to take a joke. 20 years in this business and you still can't handle a little ribbing." "A little ribbing?" Damon repeated incredulously. "You prepared a hit piece on me. You deliberately tried to humiliate me and undermine a project that hundreds of people worked on. That's not comedy, Jimmy. That's just being a bully with a platform." Kimmel's producer had abandoned all pretense of staying off camera and was now openly signaling for them to stop. A commercial break graphic flashed briefly on the monitor, but the cameramen held steady, transfixed by the unfolding drama. "The audience loves it," Kimmel insisted, gesturing toward the crowd. "This is what they tune in for." "Is it?" Damon turned to face the audience directly. "Is this what you came to see tonight? A host using his power to tear people down instead of creating something worthwhile?" He paused, scanning the rows of uncomfortable faces. "Because from where I'm sitting, no one's laughing." Indeed, the usual raucous energy of Kimmel's crowd had evaporated. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, many avoiding eye contact with both the host and his guest. "You've changed, Jimmy," Damon continued, his voice tinged with something like disappointment. "I remember when you used to punch up, not down. When did you become this person who needs to make others feel small to feel big yourself?" Kimmel adjusted his tie again, visibly uncomfortable with the direction the conversation had taken. "You don't get to come on my show and psychoanalyze me, Damon. This is my house." "And that's the problem, isn't it?" Damon replied. "You've forgotten that with this house comes responsibility. These people," he gestured toward the audience, "they invite you into their homes every night. They trust you. And how do you repay that trust? By becoming exactly the kind of person you used to make fun of." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Kimmel glanced around, suddenly aware that he was losing not just control of the interview, but potentially his audience as well. "Let's take a break," Kimmel said, his voice strained. "No." Damon's response was firm. "No more breaks, no more hiding behind commercials. You wanted to make tonight about tearing me down. Well, congratulations. You've revealed more about yourself than you ever could about me." Kimmel's face hardened. "You think you're better than me, don't you? The serious actor with his Oscar and his humanitarian work? Meanwhile, I'm just the guy who makes jokes for a living." "I never said that," Damon replied. "But there's a difference between making jokes and being cruel. There's a difference between entertainment and humiliation." A young woman in the front row stood up suddenly. "He's right," she called out, her voice shaking slightly. "This isn't funny anymore. Like a damn." Breaking, others began to voice their agreement. The crowd's mood had shifted palpably from excited spectators to uncomfortable witnesses. Kimmel, sensing the changing tide, tried a new approach. "Come on, folks. This is all part of the show. Matt and I have been doing this for years. Tell them, Matt. Tell them it's all in good fun." Damon looked directly at Kimmel, his expression grave. "Not anymore, it's not. This stopped being fun when you decided to make it personal. When you decided that ratings were more important than basic human decency." The monitor behind them suddenly flickered to life, displaying social media reactions in real time. Hashtags like @Kimmel Gone Too Far and @Team Damon were trending, with viewer comments pouring in by the thousands. "The world is watching, Jimmy," Damon said quietly, "and they're seeing exactly who you've become." The studio fell into a heavy silence. Even the crew members had stopped pretending to work, all eyes fixed on the two men locked in this unexpected showdown. Kimmel's face cycled through a series of emotions: anger, embarrassment, And finally something that looked almost like shame. "Cut to commercial," Kimmel ordered, his voice cracking slightly. But no one moved. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every excruciating second. "Your staff isn't cutting," Damon observed. "Maybe because even they've had enough." A technician near the sound booth nodded almost imperceptibly. Years of bottled frustration were being given voice, and no one wanted to silence it. Kimmel's producer finally stepped onto the stage, whispering urgently in the host's ear. Kimmel listened, his expression darkening further before he nodded stiffly. "We're trending #1 worldwide," the producer announced loud enough for the microphones to pick up. "Network executives are on the line." Kimmel loosened his tie completely now, a man watching his carefully constructed world crumble in real time. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. "Look, Matt, maybe things got out of hand tonight." "Maybe?" Damon raised an eyebrow. "You prepared a deliberate hit job on me and my work. You crossed every professional line there is. And for what? Ratings? To keep this artificial feud going because you've run out of original ideas?" Several audience members applauded, emboldened by someone finally saying aloud what many had been thinking about the increasingly mean-spirited turn the show had taken in recent months. Kimmel looked out at his audience, the people whose laughter and approval he'd taken for granted for years. Their faces reflected not amusement but disappointment. He'd lost them. "You're right," Kimmel said finally, the words seeming to physically pain him. "This went too far. I went too far." The admission hung in the air. Damon's stance softened slightly, but his eyes remained wary. "Why?" he asked simply. "We've played this game for years, and it was always in good fun. What changed?" Kimmel looked away from the cameras for a moment, gathering himself. When he turned back, the trademark smirk was gone, replaced by something more genuine and far more vulnerable. "Ratings," he admitted. "Relevance. You've been making these important films, winning awards, changing the world. And I'm still here, doing the same jokes, watching younger hosts get all the attention. I thought if I pushed harder, went edgier," he trailed off, the rest of the sentence unnecessary. Damon nodded slowly. "So you decided to use me as a punching bag to revive your career." "It wasn't supposed to go this far," Kimmel said, a note of pleading entering his voice. "The writers came up with the segment, and it just spiraled. I should have stopped it. I know that now." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. The audience watched, transfixed, as something unprecedented in late-night television continued to unfold. "You know what the ironic part is?" Damon asked finally. "I've always respected you. Despite the jokes, despite the running out of time, gag, I thought you were one of the good ones." The words landed like physical blows. Kimmel flinched, visibly affected by the past tense. "I thought you were?" "I used to be," Kimmel admitted, more to himself than anyone else. Then, looking directly at Damon, he said, "I'm sorry. Not just for tonight, but for letting this whole thing get twisted into something ugly. That's on me." The apology, unexpected and seemingly sincere, shifted the atmosphere in the studio. Damon studied Kimmel's face, searching for any trace of the usual mockery or insincerity. Finding none, he nodded once. "I accept your apology," he said carefully. "But this isn't just about me. It's about what your platform has become. It's about the people who work for you who are afraid to speak up when things go too far. It's about responsibility." "You're right," Kimmel acknowledged. Then, turning to face his crew directly, he added, "And I owe all of you an apology, too. This isn't what we built this show to be." Several crew members exchanged surprised glances. This was clearly uncharted territory for everyone involved. Damon stood up, straightening his jacket. "I think we've given everyone enough of a show for one night." "Wait," Kimmel said, rising as well. "Where are you going?" "Home," Damon replied, simply. "I came here to promote a film I believe in, not to be ambushed." not to be part of whatever crisis you're going through." Kimmel nodded, accepting the rebuke. Then, with a forthrightness that surprised even his longest-serving staff members, he turned to address the camera directly. "To everyone watching at home, I owe you an apology, too. What happened tonight? That's not what this show is supposed to be about. That's not who I want to be." He paused, visibly gathering his thoughts. Late-night TV is supposed to be a place where we can all laugh together at the end of a long day. Somewhere along the way, I forgot that. I let the pressure of ratings and relevance turn me into exactly the kind of person I used to make fun of. The audience, which had been holding its collective breath, broke into spontaneous applause, not the prompted kind that usually filled the studio, but genuine appreciation for a moment of unexpected honesty. Damon, who had been making his way toward the exit, paused. He turned back regarding Kimmel with a mixture of surprise and cautious respect. "That's a start," he acknowledged. "But actions speak louder than words, Jimmy. If you mean what you say, prove it. Not just tonight, but going forward." Kimmel nodded solemnly. "I will. And maybe someday, when I've earned it, you'll come back on the show. For real this time. No ambushes, no hit pieces. Just two people having a conversation." "We'll see," Damon replied, neither accepting nor rejecting the olive branch. With a final nod to the audience and crew, he walked off the stage with dignity intact. As the studio doors closed behind him, social media exploded with reactions. Video clips of the confrontation spread across platforms with unprecedented speed. Commentators and celebrities alike weighed in, most expressing support for Damon's stand against what many were now calling toxic entertainment. The following morning, network executives called an emergency meeting. Ratings for the episode had broken records, but the public reaction was clear. Viewers were tired of meanness masquerading as comedy. Changes would need to be made. 1 week later, Kimmel opened his show with a renovated set and a thoughtful monologue about responsibility in entertainment. The ratings, which had been declining for months before the confrontation, began to stabilize and then climb as viewers responded to the show's new direction. As for Matt Damon, The Remarkable Americans opened to critical acclaim and strong box office numbers, buoyed in part by public goodwill following his principled stand. When asked about the incident in subsequent interviews, he spoke not of grudges, but of growth. "Sometimes," he told one reporter, "it takes a public reckoning to remind all of us what matters. In an industry built on appearances, a little genuine honesty can go a long way." The feud that had once been television's longest-running joke had transformed into something neither man had expected, a catalyst for genuine change in an industry that desperately needed it.